the truth is that we have a mindset, we have an opinion when we come into a discussion, and that's great. That's appropriate. But then you have to hold it loosely.
Yes.
And I think by holding it loosely, you allow others to kind of build into that.
Hi, it's me, your teacher turned CTIO friend, Diane Doersch, and this is Beneath the Water. Okay, here we go. Well, Pete, it's good to have you here in the studio. I have to say, we go back quite a few years.
Quite a few, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about, I think it was maybe 2015 for me. I don't know when you remember me, but 2015 for me, I was at CoSN, and there was this person on the stage who sounded pretty eloquent, looked like they were running the room. That was you. And I'm like, who is this Pete Just? And I think, were you conference chair at that time?
Yeah, I was conference chair for 2 years.
Okay, and I'm thinking, I've seen superintendents have that type of poise and leadership, but I have not seen like tech directors, CTOs, having that kind of leadership and just, commanding the room. And so I think that's how you stuck out to me. It's like, who is this Pete Just? And
That's
then,
funny.
as time went on, I know this is all new to you. As time went on, it's like, oh, okay, he's in leadership. And then I recall you said, Diane, can I talk to you? And I don't know if you were talking about having me consider joining or putting my name in for nomination for the board or what, but I recall that time. So then I associated, he's in leadership in the CoSN organization, knows
That
what
had
the
to be a
hell he's
different
doing.
year.
I don't know.
I think that was a different year because I think I was chair and then a conference chair, and then I was on the board following that. And then I started, being aware of people we might want to have on the board. So it's probably a little bit of time elapsed between those 2 points.
I compressed everything. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know
when that first thing was, but that's funny. I'd never heard that before.
Oh yeah,
and I don't think of myself that way, honestly. Like when I was in college, I was so shy. I literally tested out of the speech class.
Wow.
Because I did not want to give speeches and anything like that. I was pre-PT and was not going in education or technology at all. Yeah, I was a biology major. And I thought, I'm not going to talk in front of people. That's why I want to be a physical therapist, one-on-one with people, develop relationships with them, help them. And that's what I wanted to do until the story is my swim coach got me in a situation where he basically baited me to kind of cover his class for him. And then an hour later, he said, you're pretty good in front of people. You should think about being a teacher. And that's what got me into education. But I never thought of myself as a great, eloquent, whatever you said there.
Well, that's interesting because he must have seen something very early on that you didn't even see yourself.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ed. I don't know where you are nowadays, but yeah.
Well, and that's what I remember, though. And like I said, I don't know when I hit your radar at that point, but when I think about what I remember first about Pete, that was it. How about you?
Well, interestingly, I remember the first time I probably saw you were doing a presentation, and I don't even remember what it was about, but sort of in an interesting way, I thought, the ideas that you're putting forward were really insightful. And I thought, okay, I don't hear that from too many people. So I need to kind of keep my eye on, what other things she has to say. And so over time, I started to regard you as someone who might be able to be an influencer in CoSN. And then eventually, as we were trying to find new members of the board, as I was on the executive team for the board, and we're floating ideas, and a nominations committee needed to have those, and so I thought, do you guys know Diane Doersch? And a couple of people said, oh yeah, she's great, and that's kind of how your name kind of came forward, is just somebody that seemed to be a doer. I didn't know that you were do or die at the time.
This is true. My Twitter handle, do or die.
Right, and just somebody that had a different perspective. They were looking at things from a little bit of a different angle, which I think is a real benefit. So that's kind of how you hit my radar. And I remember that I asked you, we were in Washington, D.C., and because we were getting ready, so at CoSN, you kind of things start turning over. At the CoSN conference, the new board comes in, the old board steps down, and then you start thinking about the next year. And by the time you get to November, you're thinking about nominations for the next board. And so being on that team, it was my job to try to find some people. And I remember saying, hey, are you busy at all? And I remember we met at the Russia House.
Yes, this is
in
true.
D.C. And I said, I don't know if you've ever thought about this or not, but would you be interested in running for the CoSN board? And you said, I hadn't thought about it at all.
No.
You were sort of shocked. I took you by surprise with that question, but it's all worked out pretty good.
Well, yeah, and that's interesting regarding CoSN because I was a relatively new CTO. I went from classroom teacher to director of technology and really didn't become active in CoSN until I started in Green Bay, which was 2013. And so then I started joining committees. And I think
that's right.
That's what it was. And maybe and it wasn't my plan or intention. I'm going to do stuff in these committees to get, leadership's attention.
That's not how it works typically,
No,
right? I mean, honestly, it's just you're just doing good work.
You're doing the work.
And you rise.
Yeah. And so it's interesting. I have no idea what those different thoughts or ideas were that I had, but I'm glad it caught your attention because, I think you were, one of the first introductions I had then to CoSN leadership. So it's
Very
interesting.
Cool. Yeah, it is. It's always interesting to see how people get into leadership. I never thought of myself as a leader until people approached me. And honestly, they had to do it a couple of times because I didn't believe them the first time. Like, hey, you would be really good. Have you ever thought about being an MC? Have you thought about, no, I don't think that's me. And honestly, if people weren't persistent in asking me to try, I would not have tried because I just didn't have that faith in myself.
Well, that's interesting because I've always seen you as a very, like I said, eloquent, you know what to say at the right time and all those things. Did that come naturally to you?
That's a great question. I can't really tell you.
Because your swim coach saw it.
Yeah, I really can't tell you. I think that opportunities lead to a way to stretch yourself. And when people invite you into opportunities, that does stretch you. I think that, there was some kind of divine intervention between my head and what people saw, that they saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And, it's been interesting to see that trajectory because, now I after all these years, I can see, I guess I've been leading and been given a lot of opportunities to do that.
Well, I guess I should thank your swim coach then because
yeah, right.
Then you kind of brought that up to me too, right? And have you thought of yourself as a leader, Diane? And it's like, no, I'm bossy if that has anything to do with it. But from that point, it's like, oh, you mean I could run for the CoSN board? I could throw my name in for nomination. Whether I got elected or not, that was another thing that's up to the membership.
That's right.
But being able to grow in that way, and look at you were chair, I was chair, that does lead to a bunch of really cool things, right?
I was very proud. I will say I was very proud of the moment that I realized that you were going to be asked to be chair because I thought, wow, that's kind of cool. And it was like one of the things where it's like, I don't know, it was like I felt like something that I had done had accomplished something cool. And so it was pretty neat when I realized, I saw your trajectory that you would be a great, board chair. But I never, I think the key is, for other leaders or people that are aspiring to be leaders is just do the best you can, be yourself, and let people see who you are and invite you into opportunities. And part of that is being in the right place at the right time. The fact that you were involved in a number of committees. I think we were on a committee together at some point. That exposes you and your ideas and your leadership style, your mindset to people who will give you other opportunities. And I think it's key to not play down, which I did early in my career, any skills you might have with leadership, and to allow others to, invite you in.
Yeah, yeah. And I like that part about allow others to invite you in, because we don't want to be pushy either. And like for me, I can say I was just doing my job.
Right.
I was living up to the level of excellence that I had set for myself
right.
versus what other leaders, what I felt they expected of me or other things. So I appreciate that. And I think for our new leaders, that part about being yourself is really important, and bringing, some ideas forward that maybe we haven't heard in other settings.
It's really
and
important.
That's what CoSN is about, right?
Yeah, it's really important because leadership is a collaborative effort. You need different perspectives. I think that's one of the reasons that diversity on the board is important, because there need to be different perspectives, different parts of the country, and other aspects of diversity need to introduce themselves for different ideas to come forward, and also to be representative of our entire membership.
Yeah, well, and that reminds me that you also led us through some difficult times,
Yeah.
Regarding COVID and how are we going to, keep a conference going? Do we need to cancel a conference because it was coming up? March 13th was that time.
That was rough. Being CoSN chair during the whole beginning of the pandemic, that was honestly that was a risky set of decisions we were making at CoSN, and it wasn't until we realized, okay, finally there's been an announcement that DC is shutting down. That gave us with our contract an opportunity to get out of millions of dollars of obligation.
Yes.
So we were all pretty nervous for about a month.
Force majeure.
That's when we learned what force majeure meant.
Yes.
And how important it was to have in every contract we ever signed.
Yes, Friday, March 13th was, I think, a memorable day for
everybody,
the world.
Really, yeah.
The world, yes. Okay, we're going to take a break from here to hear from our sponsors, and then we'll be back. And we're back. Now we're going to go beneath the water here, talk a bit more about leadership. And again, we talked about the pandemic and how that was moderately trying. But, for leadership, what do you want Pete Just to be remembered for as a leader?
I think that probably if I could pick one thing, it would be developing other leaders and helping them to get into leadership roles, much like people did for me. We have a program here in Indiana, the CTO to be program, that has developed a lot of our membership from kind of junior level leaders to becoming tech coordinators, directors, CTOs. And if you look, it's kind of cool. If you look at our chapter, most of our chapter leaders now came through the CTO to be program, because we've been doing it for 15 years.
That is so cool, though, that you're seeing these people rise. It's almost like an investment in people,
it is totally
isn't it?
An investment. Yeah, I think that's my calling, is to invest in people and to help them become leaders or better leaders, or give them resources to lead as well as they possibly can. I think everyone has a calling, and that they should kind of meet their calling. And for those that are called into leadership, they have to have some experiences and opportunities to do that. And I hope that's what I'm remembered for.
Okay, well, that's interesting, because you kind of talked about some things you spotted in me. When you look for leaders, what do you look for?
Yeah, that is a great question, and it's not a single answer, really.
Right.
I think that you're looking for a bit of self-confidence, although that's not exclusively true. But usually by the time I'm thinking about working with somebody, they've got some degree of self-confidence, and they have some degree of, they don't care what anyone else thinks. This is the right thing to do. This idea of,
and as a new leader, that's hard sometimes.
It is like this idea of like I can hone in a little bit on what I think is the right direction to go. But really, mostly it's a willingness to try. a willingness to step into the unknown.
Right.
Because a lot of times in leadership roles, we're the only ones that are the chief technology officer, tech director, whatever. That's why something like CoSN that brings us together is important, so that
It's
we
a
can
lonely
compare
job.
notes. It's a very lonely job. And so you have to be willing to step out and do something without the knowledge that you're going to have everyone around you say what a great idea that is, like ChatGPT might. But to
Yes.
really say, like, okay,
ChatGPT
I'm not
loves
sure.
everyone.
Yeah, I'm not sure that we're all on the same page here, but I think this is the right way to go about this. And this is why to be able to speak in a way about something that makes sense to explain why your idea is valid. So not that we're looking for that, but that's what I think you want to develop in people. And I
Yes.
think the key thing that you're looking for is a willingness to lead, a humility to some degree.
Yes,
I see this
humility.
in you. There's a humility to be able to acknowledge when you're wrong,
Yes.
to acknowledge that may not have been a best idea for
Right.
it.
Lesson learned
Yeah.
here.
And to collaborate. I think the willingness to collaborate is a huge, that is hard to teach people. So to come in with a collaborative mindset, and when we look at Indiana, a lot of the leaders here in Indiana are very collaborative. It's one of the reasons why, as a state, we really do well, is because we aren't afraid to share our Cliff's
Right.
notes of how we found success. We aren't afraid of down the road, that they're going to be more successful than I am. We think that if we work together, we're going to be more successful than either of us independently.
Right.
That's our mindset.
Right.
And, maybe that comes from Hoosier hospitality. I don't know. But the idea that, we can work together to accomplish a goal and get there faster than if we're all working independently, I think that's a big key to success.
Well, that is something because, again, I think just in some of the circles that I've been in, because Indiana has a huge, you have a huge organization here. But it's so interesting that the good leaders I see, you can trace them back sometimes, kind of like lineage. Where did you come from? Where did you learn this stuff? And it's funny how a lot of it traces back to Pete Just and the
That's
team
very
that's
kind.
here. And so again, it's the part about being remembered, and you clearly are able to spot talent and help grow that talent because it's not just one thing to spot it, right?
Yeah, you have to resource talent. That's what I told my staff when I first started in MSD Wayne. I said, my role is to help you to do the best job you can and to resource you. So I need to define your job clearly for you, and I have to be able to give you the things you need to be able to be successful. And for the success we had, I think it was because I was able to be given the resources to pass along. And I think that's a key to success is resourcing people so that they could be successful. What do you need, from me? And I will try to help you.
Right. And the individuals, of course, have to have that internal drive as well.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sure you've put resources in front of some people and they're like, thanks.
For
and
sure.
that's all right. But others, like one of my colleagues in Green Bay had said, you need to be an open vessel and you need to be willing to learn from others and change some of your opinions if you need to and all those things, and that's going to help.
Yeah, that idea of changing your opinions, I think, is really important because the truth is that we have a mindset, we have an opinion when we come into a discussion, and that's great. That's appropriate. But then you have to hold it loosely.
Yes.
And I think by holding it loosely, you allow others to kind of build into that their perspectives, how they're seeing it from their lens, and then you get to a place it's a lot more agreeable for everyone, and honestly is often a better kind of end product than if it was just what I came up with myself. You look at anything that has been created, developed by people, and the best results are when people are collaborating well together, and no one is holding so tightly onto their particular perspective that they can't, let it change at all.
Yeah, and that willingness, I think, to flex and to acknowledge that as well. Thanks for sharing that information with me because that has changed my opinion. And that, I think, is also validating to the person who gave you that information, right? Because they feel heard and seen. because of their experiences.
Yeah, my staff always knew that when I came in with an idea, it was the starting point. You know,
Yes.
I've done a little bit of research, and this is the starting point. But like, how does it fit into our environment? How does it fit? Like, I don't know what exactly the details are from where you're coming from and the knowledge you have of doing the
Right.
thing.
The doers,
Yeah.
yes. Yes.
So you need to feed that in. And as a team, we would do that. We would do that oftentimes at what we called our status meetings. And it was called a status meeting because we were basically, everyone was responsible for different things.
Right.
I would give those responsibilities out. That was delegation. And then they would come back, and the accountability was at the status meeting. You know, tell me what you've done since last week. What problems did we had? These three problems. These were the solutions. How did that go? And we collaborated. Even though that might not have been your area, you had a right to speak into it.
Sure.
Because you might be tangentially engaged with that and give a perspective that they didn't get before. So that was how we made each other better every single week.
You know, and we had something similar in Green Bay. That takes an environment of trust, because people don't want to bring up maybe some gaps that you know, they're in charge of something and there's a gap there and they're not quite sure how to solve it. How did you build that environment for safety and for trust within your people?
You can't have safety unless you have trust. It has to be trust. So when I say I'm going to resource you, if I lied to you and I don't resource you, I don't have your trust. If I say, you know, this is your job, and then all of a sudden something goes wrong and I made you responsible for the thing that went wrong and that wasn't your job, so you have to live as a leader with character and integrity.
Yes.
Character and integrity then build the trust to be able to have a culture where you can lean on each other and is, you know, transparent, and you can surface things. Like, I had people that were happy to surface things like that were problems because they knew that the team would work together to solve that for them. You know, now sometimes they were hoping that someone else would then take it on, which sometimes happened, but not always, not often.
Sure.
But, you know, that spirit of trust on the team really starts with a leader. And if I'm just foisting things on you all the time and I'm lying to you, that is a terrible environment. And I was really, you know, cognizant of the fact that I needed to be careful what I said, what I did, and then I acted out and did what I promised people.
Sure. Sticking to your word, holding yourself accountable.
That's right.
Because that models for others as well.
That's right. Servant leadership, I think, is what it's about.
Sure. Now, Pete, you and I also have gone fishing together and things like that.
Yeah.
And this is what I call the Northern Pike story. I, you know, fished from a pedal kayak, and I love, you know, throwing my bait over the side, and what are you going to get? You just don't know. And is it on a lure? Is it on a worm? Whatever. Sometimes in Wisconsin, you pull in a northern pike. And I don't know if you've got northern pike before.
I once pulled in a northern pike. I was in a canoe, and it was a bad idea. I was about to fall out of the canoe.
I know.
Let's just say I cut the line.
You're smart. Because, and really, you know, northern pike are wiggly and they're slimy. And when you get the slime on you, you smell and all those things. And they've got these huge teeth. Like for bass, you know, they've got thick lips. I can pick them up. It's always an honor to have bass thumb because you get marks from all the little teeth in your thumb and you hold that with honor. But with a northern pike, you can't grab them by their mouth. Plus their lips are very thin. And so I call it the northern pike moment, where my husband taught me this, like, when you take it off the hook over the side of the boat. You don't want a northern pike loose in your boat,
No,
writhing around with hooks all over and everything else, right?
Sharp teeth and spines.
Yeah, it's just asking for trouble. And so now, if we make an analogy with northern pike and some trouble it could lead to, in reflection on your leadership and your career, have you had northern pikes? Something that has thrown you for a loop or has been unexpected that you have to be wary of? What's your northern pike moment?
That's a great question. I think that It depends to some degree, but we touched a little bit on something totally unexpected, which was COVID.
Yes.
That kind of came up, I think, both in the school district and also with CoSN. It was very difficult, and I think many people can relate to this.
Yes.
But trying to do both, manage my district and all the things that were happening at the time, our big emergency meeting of all administrators and, defining like what even is this and what's it mean? And with my biology background also and being
yes.
involved on the operations side, understanding, what protocols look like in terms of trying to not spread contagion and, how do you do isolation and all that sort of thing, while at the same time trying to deal with, are we going to have a conference or are we about to go broke?
Yeah.
Because we've already put money into this. Conference is any day now.
Right,
How do we do it? We've never done a virtual conference. But thankfully, we had done a virtual school in our school district starting in 1999 to 2000. That school year, we launched the first virtual school. So that was like eons before
Wow.
that, right?
Wow.
So there was some experience there of knowing how to do virtual things. We had some staff members at CoSN that had done some things that they weren't normally doing at CoSN, but they'd had some backgrounds in. And then I had an e-learning team that was phenomenal and an IT team that was phenomenal at customer service and understanding how you do online things. And we had just practiced a lot of different things that allowed us to make a moment like that to find success through it. But man, it was a long 3 to 4 months to kind of before we got to summer. and thankfully, we were able to do the CoSN conference virtually. It was interesting because everyone was just saying, we're not having a conference, we're not having a conference. All these other ed tech organizations were just saying no conference this year. And we felt like we had to do something. And I think we did a pretty good job for the short runtime that we had, knowing all that was required. I mean, obviously we had all our speakers lined up, so that's kind of one of the hardest things. But how you do delivery of that was quite the challenge. But I was real pleased with how it ended up. And then on the school district side, we stood up a great environment. We'd already had a great learning management system, so we were able to scale that because we were real comfortable scaling it. Yep. And then my IT services team, we'd done some things before where we did drop off, pick up, and I had to cut the line on some things. Like I really believed in ownership of devices by students. Like if you got a device that was yours,
take care of it,
literally for life. Like we literally had a practice where. And a board-approved approach where once you got that, you had that for the period of time we were using it in the school, so that depending on the device, it was 3 to 4 years, 4 years typically. And then after that, it was still yours.
Wow.
You got to take it home with you, which was one of the ways. So if you took
care of it,
that's right. You had a good Chromebook.
And if you didn't take care of it.
That's right. And it was a way that we could resource families.
Yes.
We had high poverty in the school district, so it was a way that we could resource families without really a whole lot of effort, but it took effort on the student side. So we let it be known up front that this is how the thing was going to work. And really, I think it worked out really great, but that also kind of created some complexities when all of a sudden you had a broken one. We can't just take it down the hall to, the lady that could then turn it around for you, give you a loaner, and then give it back to you the next day because she had the parts waiting there or whatever. So I had to let go of that, and that honestly created some complications with the whole, device, surplusing and all that. But
asset
anyway,
management, all those things.
But there were things I had to let go of that I thought were pretty solid for us to do. But then in the midst of the tempest of all of that, we had to just cut bait on that.
So it sounds like you pulled in the resources, and fortunately, you had people who had experience with things. I remember at CoSN talking about this. I don't know if I was just on the board because didn't we adopt some sort of conference platform?
We did.
And then I did some sort of introduction. So as soon as your little virtual person walked into the conference, they got to see my face.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
We are a technology organization, so kudos to us for figuring a technological solution.
I felt very strongly about that, and I'm not the type of person that's going to admit defeat very easily. So, whether it was with the devices or whether it was with standing up the platform at CoSN or whatever, I'm the type of person that's just going to be like, maybe getting a little too in the weeds of like, what can I do to help you? Because this thing has to happen. There is we're not going to do it. We're going to make it happen. Let's figure it out, together. And yeah, that's maybe why God put me in that place at that time. I don't know.
Well, and again, the resolve to, say, okay, we're going to get this solved.
That's right.
And so good for you. Good for you. Well, yeah, that was quite the Northern Pike moment. And we are here to, say we're on the other side of that.
Thank God.
Absolutely.
Sure. I was so happy that when we hit 2020 and we just, that summer, and we started looking at, what can we do to bring students back into school? Because that's what's best for kids. And here in Indiana, we were allowed to do that. For a couple months. Then we were sending them back home again. And it was sort of that being back and forth and forth just as things ebbed and flowed. And that was probably the most taxing part on the staff. They just got really worn out. And understandably so. I was getting worn out. Everybody was. I think it was just everyone in the world was just exhausted. And the isolation and everything like that. So it was a big Northern Pike for all of us.
How did you keep your people going? You said you were tired. They were tired. How did you, help them get through that?
Like I said, we had those status meetings and we went virtual with those, so we didn't ever stop those. I think that one of the things that was important was to have consistency through absolute chaos.
Yes.
You have to have a backbone of some consistent things. And because status was important, it was where we all got together. We joked and laughed and, had fun with each other, but then also got down to work and knocked things out and did the distribution of tasks and, what the resources were that we need, and I would make promises that I would have to fulfill within a week. And, it was just a backbone that we continued to have. We just moved virtual. And even when we started coming back, I allowed staff, like, if you don't want to show up in the room, that's fine. You could just still dial in. And we honestly did that for 2.5 years, I think, where, staff that had, compromised immune systems or stuff like that just didn't feel comfortable in the room. And we have to just make that okay. And I love the fact that the staff just considered that totally normal. And we just were a good team.
You shepherded your department through this all the way. And I think, again, I believe in systems and structures. And this was an existing system and structure that kind of helped build, or solidify all the way through so that everyone could follow it. They knew what to expect, and they knew that you were there and the people were there for them. And so, again, I love hearing about things like this because leaders set up good structures and systems for their people to be successful in. And whether you planned it or not, you decide to hold on to that so you could sustain your people through it.
Yeah, and I think no matter what, you have to be there. You have to be there in person, going through all the same things. People joke about, like, they were so bad to get back to work after having to work from home for so long. I was like, I think I worked from home for a week, and then I was back in the office again. So I was also assistant director of operations, so we were also seeing a lot of projects through. And so honestly, I was also realizing, this is a good time to expedite all of the construction because those people can't work anywhere but in schools and hospitals.
There you go.
So, we got a huge talent pool of craftspeople.
No competition.
So that was also taking up a bunch of my time because I was like, come on over here and let's get these projects going that we signed up for.
Wow,
let's knock them out. Let's get them done before summer instead of at the end of the year,
Again, I appreciate that foresight, right? Because you looked at resources that were freed up and you used them. Well, we've talked about a myriad of things here, but as we have leaders, new leaders who are coming into their roles, and not just in technology, what advice would you give them regarding how to boost their leadership capabilities here?
I think things have stayed the same, but changed also over time, right? So, those of us that are, let's just say, not the youngest in the,
We're
we're
seasoned,
on
Pete. We're
on
seasoned.
the other end of the other end of the spectrum of our careers. It was different for us because technology was just sort of starting to surge into different places, and
Yes.
we could kind of
Yes.
ride the wave as the tide rose. And today it's a bit different.
It is.
I do think also there's a lot of opportunities today that we didn't have back then. Certifications like CETL, CCRE, the different things that we work together to promote and help people attain. Those are, I think, kind of low-hanging fruit for those that are interested,
Yes.
that you can just pursue that on your own, and they're nationally portable credentials. So I think that those types of things which didn't exist are a good stepping
Shows
stone
that you're
in.
serious about it, right?
Yeah.
About leadership and about continuous learning
That's right.
and all those things.
Yeah, so I think, and there's so many opportunities, now MOOCs have kind of come and gone, but there's a lot of different opportunities out there. Coursera and other things that are out there where you can learn and independent of any structures.
Sure.
So I think that's great. But at the end of the day, it is still all about your character. It's still all about, wanting to do what's best for the organization, the school district that you work for, putting that at the forefront of how you're thinking about things. I don't want to encourage anyone to be a leader. There are environments.
Or to make more money.
Or to make more money.
Yes.
And I'll just say we both do things for free all the time.
Yes.
Because we think it's the right thing to do, because we think it's going to help people. You have to be able to put food on the table and provide for your future. But at the end of the day, we don't say no to things just because maybe it's not enough. If we think it's the right thing to invest in, so I think there has to be that mindset of you're doing it for the greater good. So part of it again is mindset, and also, the characteristics of humility, of integrity, of, when you say something, you should do the thing you said you're going to do. Just, you can practice those in the classroom, in the data center, now, today.
At home.
At home with your spouse or your family or your significant other, whatever. You could practice those today. So it's not like you have to have a certain type of opportunity.
Right.
And as you practice those things, and I think that kind of going back to your question of, how did you get to where you're at in terms of your leadership, I honestly think I tried to do the right things early in my career. I tried to do things, I honestly worked way too much early in my career. I was probably putting in 70 hours a week in the school. And, that was probably too much. But so do take care of yourself. I wore myself to a frazzle and probably didn't make the best decisions all the time because of that. So you have to also, there's a wellness piece to it that you have to institute. But I think it's just common everyday practices of, having objectives, knowing how to meet those objectives, setting yourself to the task, and then sharing freely with those around you to allow all of them to kind of also rise with you. When you start practicing that habit, all of a sudden you stop thinking about yourself and you start thinking about how can I help other people. And when you start doing that, it's interesting to me because then people start talking about you. You're trying to help them. That's your objective. And then they're talking about you, which is not what the goal was.
Right. And I was one of those as well. Keep your head down, just do your work. And somehow the world noticed, right?
They do, yeah.
Again, because we were choosing the right things to invest in, I think.
Right, yeah.
And that part about also, doing some of that work kind of on your own, maybe not getting the pay bump because of it, but knowing that it's the best for the organization or whatever. And I'm not saying do free work, But I think sometimes we need to calculate those things out,
100%. I can think of at least 4 times in my career where I could have done that and got a pay bump, or I could have stayed and done what I felt like I was being called to, and I wasn't done with it yet, even though I was losing $20,000 or whatever, just because it was the right thing to do. And I could have complained and whatever, but I was just like, I'm just going to keep doing that. And by keeping on doing the right thing, I think that, like I said, kind of gives you in some sort of weird, black box, kind of weird sort of mystical way, like you do the right thing and, it comes back for you. I really think that you get blessed with that.
Yeah. Some people call it karma. I don't know what it is, but I think that people definitely get blessed with that when they do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
So any other words of advice or things? You've given us a lot to think about, a lot to practice here. But again, you're a grower of people. And so
I think the one thing we haven't maybe talked enough about is that, if you do, don't neglect the most important thing in your life, which is if you have a spouse, if you have a family, if you have kids, don't neglect that for the leadership opportunity. There was a point at which when I was still at the high school I first started at, and I was teaching AP Bio, I was the head athletic trainer, I was, helping with extracurricular, clubs, and literally that's when I was putting in 70, maybe even 80 hours some weeks, because as an athletic trainer, it's sort of part of the deal. I was just married and we had little kids, and my wife, Melinda, she said, okay, so I decided I'm going to go ahead and help with, I'm going to take care of all the catering for all the football and basketball events so that the kids can be at school while you're there too. And I thought, well, that's pretty cool. She wants to be a contributor and all that. But I need to start thinking seriously if that's her mindset of maybe not doing that anymore. I think I was overcommitted to that profession. And eventually I chose to leave it, which was really hard because I enjoyed sports medicine a lot. Yet I also saw how it was nibbling away at the fabric of what I wanted to really be my ultimate legacy, which was my kids and the devotion I have to my wife. So, at the end of the day, what you're known for in your professional world is great. But at the end of the day, if you lose your family because of that, that's maybe not that great.
Right.
That's the most important thing. So hadn't said that, but I think that's super important, is to prioritize, what's most important in your life and make sure that those are getting the attention that they need.
Wow. Well, there we have it. We have been beneath the water with Pete Just. This has been Beneath the Water podcast, hosted by me, Diane Doersch. Diane Doersch is executive producer, creative director, and editor. Brock Mende is our audio engineer and sound designer. Special thanks to Friends of Friends Recording in Chicago, Illinois. The link to the community can be found at the description below. Also, please subscribe and give us a 5-star review, because those reviews go a long way in helping us reach the people who will find a home here. Thanks for joining.